Sounds familiar, doesn't it? But there's more to this simple, enthusiastic line than meets the eye. Don't you think it has a strangely militant energy? SpongeBob's constant readiness, his focus, and his almost drill-like discipline hint at something deeper. Maybe this isn't just a happy-go-lucky fry cook. Maybe there's a hidden military past we've never considered. I know it sounds crazy, but consider this. He's unusually punctual, strategic, and surprisingly skilled in combat. I mean, the guy can tie knots in his sleep, set up camp like a survivalist, and throw down with some surprisingly serious fighting skills. So what do we already know about him? Well, he lives in a pineapple under the sea, has a pet snail, works at a fast food joint, and lives by the motto, "I'm ready." But look a little bit closer, and you'll see there's a whole other side to him. A side that's organized, suspiciously prepared for combat, and highly disciplined.
The quiz pencil goes right over here next to the essay pencil, and the essay pencil gets turned sideways towards the notepad, just in case I have to write an essay.
If you've ever caught SpongeBob's intense attention to detail, his tendency to over-prepare, and his split-second reflexes, you might wonder if he picked up those skills somewhere other than Mrs. Puff's boating school. I mean, consider his physical skills. This little sponge can take on martial arts, throw perfectly timed karate chops with Sandy, and survive some pretty intense situations that would have the rest of us begging for help. For a guy who supposedly spent his whole life in Bikini Bottom, he's got more moves than someone who's never had combat training. If you remember the Karate Island episode from Season 4, you know that he trained under Sandy to become the ultimate karate king. He took it up with the kind of obsessive, methodical approach you'd expect from someone with a background in serious training. Then there's his routine. SpongeBob doesn't just wake up every morning. He launches himself out of bed, ready to tackle the day like it's some kind of mission. He has a precisely timed wake-up call. He has nearly perfect hygiene, and he's got some insane work habits. In a nutshell, SpongeBob operates like someone following a strict regimen. And I haven't even mentioned his resilience yet. SpongeBob bounces back from every failure without missing a beat, and he's genuinely unbreakable, with a level of mental toughness that seems almost trained. Do you see where I'm going with this? I believe that SpongeBob's military-like behaviors hint at a deep-seated programming. I'm talking about a mindset that was drilled into him from some type of past service. After all, he's almost constantly in alert mode. SpongeBob approaches everything, no matter how small, as if it's a serious assignment. From perfecting the Krabby Patty formula to arranging his furniture in exactly the right order. His life is a series of missions, and each one gets his full, hyper-focused attention. And SpongeBob even uses what could be considered military-grade tactics to handle pressure. Think back to the episode Krusty Krab training video.
Welcome aboard. If you're watching this video, then let me be the first to say congratulations. You've recently been hired by the Krusty Krab restaurant, and this is your first official day of training.
Can I make a Krabby Patty now?
Oh no, you've got a lot to learn before you're ready to make a Krabby Patty.
SpongeBob aces every single part of Krusty Krab's training, and he does it like a seasoned pro. While watching this episode, I felt like he's familiar with drills, intense repetition, and sticking to protocol. He's got a focus that would make even the toughest drill sergeant proud. But maybe the most convincing clue is his relentless optimism. He's like a soldier who's been trained to face danger and keep pushing forward no matter what. He doesn't let anything stop him, even in the face of major setbacks or when he's clearly in over his head, whether it's Squidward's negativity, Mr. Krabs' stinginess, or the constant life-endangering situations he finds himself in. SpongeBob remains completely unflappable. Now, you can say that his persistent positivity is just a part of his nature, but isn't there a possibility that it's the result of a trained mentality to keep calm and carry on? He could be dealing with some kind of conditioning to always see the best in any situation, like a coping mechanism for something more intense in his past. I know it's a wild theory, but it's just the beginning. See, there are some strange, darker moments where SpongeBob's behavior hints at something that goes beyond his usual quirky personality, something that almost resembles symptoms of PTSD. Yeah, PTSD for a sponge. Stay with me here. And in nearly every episode, SpongeBob is accompanied by his pet snail, Gary. What if Gary is more than just a pet? he might be a specially trained emotional support companion given to SpongeBob to help him cope after he was discharged. Here, I want you to think about Bubble Buddy. At first, he might seem like just another quirky creation of SpongeBob's imagination, but what if Bubble Buddy represents something more? Perhaps he was SpongeBob's way of dealing with the loss of a real friend, assigning personality traits to an imaginary buddy as a way to cope. Oddly enough, Bubble Buddy turns out to be fully sentient. Was he somehow a connection to a comrade SpongeBob lost? And SpongeBob has frequent, intense responses to what most would consider minor setbacks. Ever notice how he sometimes spirals into near panic over the smallest things? Whether it's failing at a task or disappointing Mr. Krabs, SpongeBob can go from cheerful to hyper-anxious in a flash, as if failure is absolutely not an option.
What's his name? What's his name? I got nothing on a name. Come on, baby, what's the name? We threw out his name!
For a sponge with such an easygoing job, why does he seem to treat everything like a high-stakes mission? And what's up with his overvigilance? He's always incredibly aware of his surroundings, like he's on constant high alert. Maybe his overvigilance is a result of the legendary SpongeBob War. Sure, you can chalk some of this up to his naturally enthusiastic personality, but there are moments where it seems like he can't fully relax, as though he's been trained to expect danger at any second. And have you noticed his strange fascination with jellyfishing? I mean, it's a risky, intense activity, which SpongeBob approaches with an almost obsessive focus. For SpongeBob, jellyfishing is a full-on tactical operation. Could this be his way of simulating the excitement or danger he experienced in his past life?
Being a jellyfish sure is fun.
Not to mention how he handles authority and structure. SpongeBob shows a rigid respect for rules and hierarchy, whether it's his undying loyalty to Mr. Krabs or his total adherence to Krusty Krab policies. He's almost too disciplined for the average fry cook, like he's used to following orders without question. He's the kind of guy who says, "Sir, yes, sir," to his boss and sticks to procedures, even when they make absolutely no sense. If we take this theory seriously, it's even possible that SpongeBob had a major breakdown at some point in his life, which might explain his overly cheerful and slightly erratic personality. And it's not just SpongeBob's past. This theory goes for the entire history of Bikini Bottom, hinting that the whole town could be shaped by a major conflict. I mean, just take a closer look at the environment. Bikini Bottom has several places that could be linked to a war-torn past. Goo Lagoon, the Jellyfish Fields, and even the Chum Bucket, which feels like the remnants of a once-thriving business, now reduced to a rundown, suspicious operation. We can even speculate that Bikini Bottom's past included a civil war, a struggle between mutated fish and ordinary fish. The mutants may have attempted to take over Bikini Bottom, only to be driven out and forced to establish a new life in Rock Bottom. This kind of conflict could explain why the town's residents seem unusually adept at survival, and it might also hint at why Mr. Krabs is so security conscious. And have you noticed that the residents of Bikini Bottom seem to possess peculiar skills or behaviors that would be unusual in any other setting but could make sense in a post-war society? For example, Squidward has an obvious disdain for authority figures and an almost militant level of routine.
What the? Can I help you, officer?
Mr. Krabs, as we know, is obsessed with money and security, like someone who might have lived through severe shortages or high-stakes conflicts. Even Patrick might even have a military past of his own. He could have been a Navy captain who suffered an injury that left him with permanent brain damage. That could explain his lack of awareness, his unusual strength, and how he still manages to live comfortably without a job. These quirks suggest that each character could have been shaped by events more intense than anything we've seen on screen. This hypothetical war could explain the strange alliances we see, like the rivalry between Mr. Krabs and Plankton, which feels more personal and deep-seated than just a business competition. Were they on opposite sides of a struggle for dominance in Bikini Bottom? And if the concept of a Bikini Bottom war has any truth, what could have sparked it? some fan theories speculate that this war might have stemmed from intense competition for resources or a territorial dispute. In a vibrant underwater ecosystem where boundaries can be difficult to define, clashes between sea creatures, maybe even whole communities, might have become inevitable. This idea suggests that various groups within Bikini Bottom were once divided, perhaps even forming alliances and rivalries that could explain some of the strange relationships we see today. For instance, what if Mr. Krabs and Plankton once led opposing factions, each vying for control over the local economy? After the dust settled, they might have tried to make amends and start a business together, as we saw, but their deep-seated rivalry, rooted in being former enemies, could have made that partnership impossible to sustain.
Here's your Chum Bucket Supreme. Enjoy! Amazing!
And maybe Sandy Cheek's presence in Bikini Bottom isn't as random as it seems. The only land dweller, Sandy might actually be a representative of a faraway territory, an ambassador of sorts who came to Bikini Bottom either after or because of this conflict. Her dedication to scientific research and her isolation from the other residents might hint at her outsider status. And what about that small helicopter she uses? It bears a striking resemblance to the OH-6 Cayuse, a military helicopter often used during the Vietnam War. Sandy's ties to such machinery could mean she represents the surface world's Navy sent to monitor or study Bikini Bottom after this conflict. Even Mrs. Puff has this cautious demeanor and occasional paranoia, which makes me think that she is hiding past traumas, and her jumpiness around authority figures and strict rule enforcement could hint at past experiences where survival depended on such traits.
Okay, Mrs. Puff, what's my final score?
6.
Woo! And how many do I need to pass?
6.
Ooh.
100.
What?
600. You need 600 to pass. You got 6.
Could she have been a member of a faction with a strict hierarchy, or perhaps someone who witnessed the effects of war firsthand? Or take Larry the Lobster. His intense focus on bodybuilding and physical challenges might not just be about fitness. It could be his way of preparing for any unseen threats. He appears to be the hero archetype, perhaps inspired by a time when strength and vigilance were necessary traits to ensure the safety of the community. And if this sounds a bit far-fetched, let me bring you back to SpongeBob himself, and more specifically, let's talk about his connection with Mr. Krabs. Now, we know Mr. Krabs is a former Navy man, with a well-documented obsession with naval terms, sailor culture, and of course, money.
And me ship was being tossed about like a rag doll on a trampoline.
But what if Mr. Krabs and SpongeBob share a connection that goes beyond the simple boss-employee dynamic? Could it be that Mr. Krabs actually trained SpongeBob at some point in his mysterious past, or at the very least, recognized something familiar in SpongeBob's behavior that made him take the sponge under his wing? Think about it. Mr. Krabs runs the Krusty Krab with all the strictness of a military operation, from the punctuality to the mandatory uniform, which is oddly similar to a war uniform. From day one, SpongeBob was thrown into this environment where uniformity and loyalty were drilled into him, almost as if he were being trained by Mr. Krabs himself. And let's not forget that Krabs trusts SpongeBob with tasks he wouldn't dream of giving to Squidward, like guarding the Krabby Patty secret formula or handling high-pressure situations. Then there's their strangely close relationship. Despite all the other fish in the sea, Mr. Krabs clearly favors SpongeBob, not just because he's an excellent fry cook, but because SpongeBob treats him with the kind of respect usually reserved for commanding officers. SpongeBob practically worships him like an authority figure. In fact, some fans speculate that Mr. Krabs may see SpongeBob as the son he never had, someone he can pass his military teachings on to in the form of Krusty Krab operations. And let's not overlook the fact that Mr. Krabs is more than willing to take advantage of SpongeBob's military-grade loyalty. He knows SpongeBob would do anything for him, even if it means risking his well-being for the sake of the Krusty Krab. Mr. Krabs exploits this loyalty to the fullest, sometimes putting SpongeBob in questionable situations that he knows the sponge will tackle with complete dedication. Krabs is aware of exactly how to pull SpongeBob's strings, tapping into that mysterious, almost conditioned loyalty SpongeBob seems to have for his mission. If you still don't believe that SpongeBob has a military past, think about the sponge we meet in episode 1. He is surprisingly self-assured, confident, and ambitious. This isn't someone who just stumbled into a job. It's someone who knows what he wants and is determined to make it happen, which suggests he's had some serious life experiences before flipping patties.
I can assure you these next 4 weeks will be the worst years of your miserable lives. Your spines will break, your teeth will ache, your eyes will be bloodshot. You will drive out of this school in style, or you will be carted out in your granny's handbasket. Everyone will follow the rules.
I mean, look at SpongeBob's level of expertise at the Krusty Krab, his relationship with Mr. Krabs, and his incredible work ethic. All of this suggests a background of training, discipline, and perhaps even survival skills. It's also worth considering the idea that SpongeBob may have held other jobs before he settled at the Krusty Krab. Perhaps he's tried his hand at different trades, picking up his diverse skills along the way, before Mr. Krabs saw his potential and recruited him. Whatever his past holds, it seems clear that SpongeBob is a character with hidden depths. His innocence, boundless energy, and strange quirks are likely more than just personality traits. They may be remnants of a complex life we've only caught glimpses of. So what do you think? Does SpongeBob have a secret history as a hardened military sponge? Or is he simply a relentless optimist with a knack for adventure and a passion for flipping Krabby Patties? Don't forget to share your thoughts with me in the comments section below. Until next time, take care and stay tuned.